This is Gemara in Kesubos Daf Lamed Zayin. We're holding the last line of Lamed Vav and Beis as we continue trying to understand that which Rav Yochanan said, the way that Rav Yochanan explained Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. Rami lei Rav Papa bar Shmuel Rav Yosef. Rav Papa bar Shmuel asked Rav Yosef the following question on Rav Yochanan: V'sava Rav Yehuda, are you really going to tell me that b'kedushas l'kaimel? Again, now let's remind ourselves what we're talking about. The woman is captured; she's in captivity, and Rav Yehuda was of the opinion that she's allowed to say that she came out and the captives didn't sleep with me, they didn't violate me, I'm still kosher. Says the Gemara, does Rav Yehuda really hold that? V'atanya, we learned in our Brayso, Hagiyarish and Iskaira, a girl that converts, V'ra Sadam, and then she sees blood. Rav Yehuda, Aimer Dayo Shaita, says Rav Yehuda, that what is the din in this case? If she sees dam after she converts, the halacha is she is tamei for how long? The amount of time that she saw the blood. She's like a regular woman, and she's tamei either for 24 hours or from checking to checking. So now, let's leave that halacha and let's continue. For a moment, just look at the top Rashi, and Rashi says, what's Daya Shaita? Means that there's no din, the Gezira of Toma of 24 hours. But let's continue in the Braisa. Usricha, because this is really the detail that we need. So din number one is she sees dam. How do we deal with the fact that she sees dam? Din number two says the Braisa. Usricha lahantim gibel chadash and divi Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, she has to wait. This girl that converts cannot get married for 3 months. Rav Yosi matir liarz nasim miyad. So what does Rav Yehuda hold? Rav Yehuda holds she converted, she can't get married right away. Why not? Because we have to be concerned that maybe when she was a Giyaris, maybe someone violated her, maybe she slept with someone and she's going to have a baby. So we have to wait 3 months to ensure that she's not pregnant. So I asked the Gemara, how could you, Rav Yehuda, tell me b'kedushas l'kaima? We see clearly that every Giyaris we have to wait because we assume that maybe she did have relations. Answers the Gemara, that which I'm sure many people are bothered by. Apples and oranges, what are you asking? We're talking about a shvuya, a girl that's in captivity, and you're bringing me a raya from a girl that becomes a ger. When it becomes a ger, she was a guy 5 days ago. So when she was a guy, she didn't stop herself from having relations because she was a guy. But shvuya, when we have a good kosher girl that's captured, mitra nafsha, she guards herself. And that's why Rav Yehuda holds that she has this, we can assume that she's b'kedusha. So how are you asking me a question, Rav Yehuda, from a case of Giyaris? Says the Gemara, you're right. 8 lines down. Let's ask directly on the case of captivity. Danya. Hagiyaris. V'hashvuya. Okay, so we're talking about a girl that's in captivity. V'hashivcha sheniftu shenisgaru shenishtachru, and they're redeemed and they become a ger or they become freed. Yisirus abanis ganim v'lshan v'yom echad. Older than 3 years old, meaning, therefore, what is older than 3 years old? Remind us all the way back to the beginning of the Masechta. That means that if she had relations, she has no besulin because they don't grow back after the age of 3. Bingo. Says Rav Yehuda, she has to wait 3 months because we assume that she had relations. We have to make sure she's not pregnant. And Rav Yosi matil yarzin yasim miyad. So Ishtik, he was quiet. Good kasha. It seems clearly that Rav Yehuda holds that we suspect that she had relations in captivity. Amar lei, so he said, Midish milach baha. Do you have an answer? Beautiful question. Did you hear anything? Amar lei, hachi amar Rav Sheshes. This is how Rav Sheshes answered. Sheru'ua shenevala. The case is talking about that they saw that she had relations. That's the case that they suspect. In our case, we didn't see she had relations, so we can assume that she's b'kedusha, that she's holy. In this case, we saw that she had din avera. Says the Gemara, Yachim, I tell Rav Yosi, 1 second. If we saw her have relations, how could Rav Yosi say, Matal Yaris Midasim Miyad, she get married right away? We saw that she slept with the captors. Amar Rabba, because Rav Yosi, Shemizana Mishameshes, B'moich, Shalaitis Aber. Says Rav Yosi, yes, she had relations. But because she's a woman in captivity and she doesn't want to have a child, she's Mishameshes B'moich, she cleans herself out with a type of sponge material. Rashi says in a sentence, Moich La'achar Bila V'She'eves Azurah, and she cleans out all the semen, all the seed from inside of her in order to ensure that she doesn't have a kid. Primitive birth control. So that's why Rav Yosi allows her to get married right away, because we assume this is what she did. So says the Gemara, within Rav Yosi, Bishlam Giyayres, I understand. Given the Daitala Guri, Mentor Nasha. She plans on becoming a convert, so she ensures that she doesn't have a baby. Shavuya, girls in captivity as well, Nami. She doesn't know when they're going to come and sell her away, and therefore, she as well makes sure that she doesn't have a baby. But Shivcha Nami, Dishama Pimara. The Shimcha, the maidservant as well. You know why she does not have to wait? Because the maidservant as well hears from her master that he's going to free her. So in all these three cases, I understand Rav Yossi's psychological understanding of this girl, that she knows she's eventually going to get out of this situation. So she ensures that she doesn't have a child. She does this primitive birth control, Mishameshes B'maich, in order to make sure she doesn't have a baby. But says the Gemara, but there was another case. What are you going to tell me in the case when we have a regular maid, a regular Eved that leaves V'shein V'ayin, that he has his tooth knocked out, he has his eye knocked out, and the law is he goes free. But in that case, there was no preconceived understanding that they're going to get freed. So why would that girl be Mishameshes B'maich? If you're going to answer, which I'm sure many people are thinking, Rav Yossi did not say his din in the case of Mimela, meaning Rav Yossi only said that Mutali Aris and Nasim had to let her get married right away in the cases where it was within their understanding they're going to get free, they're going to become a ger, they're going to become sold away. That's when Rabbi says you get married right away. But says the Mar, it's not true. Hare anusa umefuta. But there were two cases in the Bryce, a woman that's violated or seduced. Dimimela. Those are cases that there's no plan. They don't necessarily, it wasn't preconceived. They didn't plan to have this relation. Vetanya, and yet, what do we say in that case? Anusa umefuta. Rav Yossi matzal arz and asimiyad. So we see clearly Rav Yossi is taking his ideological yesod all the way. Rav Yossi taught us that what's going on over here, that she's Mishameshes B'maich, she ensures she doesn't have a child. That's why Rav Yossi says she get married right away. But says the Gemara, what about in cases where it wasn't planned? There was a case that she was violated, she was seduced, she didn't plan on having relations. So why in that case do we assume that she's Mishameshes B'maich and therefore she get married right away? Elamar Rabbah explains Rabbah a bit deeper in the side of Rav Yossi. Because Rav Yossi, Isha mizane misapeches. She doesn't need, the whole question was predicated on the fact to be mishameshes b'moich, to clean herself out with this sponge, with this towel, whatever it is. She needs that sponge. But says Rabbah, you know what's going on over here? Whenever a woman is mizana, whenever she has relations which weren't consensual, weren't planned, we should call it, then what she does right after is misapeches, she flips over, kidesh lo tisaber, she does his best to her ability to make sure to get rid of all the semen, even without when it's not planned. So even in the case of Einis, a violation of mefuta, of seduction, even though she had no plan, she still tries to at some level clean herself out. That's why Rav Yossi allows her to get married right away. But now the Gemara has to explain, what about Rav Yehuda? Says Rav Yehuda, it's a very nice thing to think that she's going to try. But how do you know? Maybe she didn't do it well. Maybe she became pregnant. So says Rav Yehuda, she has to wait 3 months before she remarries. We continue 5 lines from the wide lines, quoting the Mishnah, Shenemar v'lo ya'asan ani yashanish. And this was the source that of basically Kimlei b'deramine, a discussion that we've been having last week or so, that any time there's a payment and there's a death penalty, you don't do the payment, you only get the death penalty. And we learned it out from V'lo Ya'asan, when there's no fatality, when there's no death penalty, then Anish Anish. That's when you have to pay the monetary payment. Whereas the obvious implication is that when there is an Asain, when there is a death penalty, then there's no monetary payments. Ask the Gemara about Nafka. You're telling me that's the source for Kimlei b'Diramine. That's the source that whenever there's a death penalty and monetary payments, you don't have to pay. But you know we learned it out from? We learned it from Kidei Rishasai. Famously from the Gemara in Makis. According to the wickedness, Mishum Risha Achaz Atom Echayvai. V'Atom Echayvai Mishum Shtei Rishayos. Though we learned out from there's never an obligation for 2 wickednesses, 2 evils. You never get money and death. So why are you telling me we learned it out from Liyasan Anish Yanish? Answers the Gemara, Chada b'misa b'mamayin, and on the first white line, Chada b'malkos u'mamayin. We need 2 sources for 2 different cases. We need a source to teach me that when someone's going to get killed, he doesn't have to pay, and when someone gets malkos, he doesn't have to pay. Utricha, there's a reason why we need 2 sources, and we cannot learn one from the other. Diashmin on misa u'mamayin, I would have thought Misham dika ibn neshama, you're losing your life. Aval malkos u'mamayin, like ibn neshama imaloi. You're not losing your life, you're just getting smacked, you're just getting malkos. So you would think maybe in that case, you still have to make the monetary compensation. So says the pasuk, no. V'yashmina malchus umam, and I would have thought misham zol chamer yisuri. It's not so chamer. That's why You don't have to make the payment because you didn't do such a bad aveira. Avol misa, mama the chami yisura, you killed someone. Rachmana l'slan, I would think that maybe you get killed and you get the monetary payment. Emaloi, sricha, that is the reason why we need two psukim. But says the Gemara on the last line of Lamzayin of an Aleph, Rameir, Damar, Moiko, Mishalim, Rameir argues. And Rameir actually holds that in the case of Malchus, you do have to pay and get Malchus. In the case of death, you don't get killed and have to pay. But in case of Malchus, you do both. So Tarti Lamali, what does Rav Meir do with both psukim? Explains the Gemara, Chada b'misa u'mamayin, v'chada not Malchus u'mamayin, because Rav Meir holds you get Malchus and mamayin, but v'chada b'misa u'malchus. Interesting. When it's misa and mamayin, you don't have to pay. Similarly, says Rav Meir, though the pasuk teaches me, when it's misa and malchus, you don't get malchus and misa, you just get misa. Utzricha, we need both psukim again. Diash, mina misa u'mamayin, the second line of Lam Zayin base. I would have thought misham dechada begufei, v'chada b'mamayin. Therefore, lo yavdina. I would have thought two different punishments, one from your wallet and one from your soul, killing you and making you pay. That we don't do to you. Avol b'miso malchus da'idi begufei. We're smacking you twice. Well, actually 39 plus. We're giving you malchus and then we're going to kill you. We think maybe you are a chayif. Ema misa arichti. Maybe it's one long death penalty. V'nevid bey. Maybe we would think first you get malchus and then we kill you. It's one long act of killing you. So there's a havamina to say that you would get misa malchus. V'yashmina misa malchus. I would have thought hard to be gufa le'avdinon. The exact opposite's far. Maybe two times we're not going to hit you twice. Avol misa mama and one in your wallet. Chad be gufa, chad be money. Eman nevid bey. Sricha. And therefore, even according to Rav Meir, we need both psukim. So it's beautiful. So we learned out that why do we have a pasuk of Ktei Rishasai? Why do we have the pasuk of Asain? Two different psukim, either to teach me Misa and Mamain, or Mammon and Malchus, or according to Rav Meir, teach me Misa and Mamain, or Misa and Malchus. Says the Gemara, we have another pasuk. The pasuk says you should not take money from the Reitzeach. Lamali, why do we need that pasuk? Explains the Gemara again because it teaches me the same thing. You would think maybe you could pay and get out of the death penalty. Says the pasuk, no. Similarly, says the pasuk, do not take money and instead of going to the Ir Miklat in the case when you kill B'Shagik. Lamli, why do you need this case? The same thing. Don't take money to be part from Galus. Lamli, why do we need both of these psukim? They teach me almost the same thing. Two different dinim. When you kill B'Shagik, you kill B'Mezid. The first pasuk Misham the Chamer Yisur, you did a terrible Averos, you would think you cannot pay out of the death penalty. Avol Shagi, when it was a mistake. So Chamer Yisur I would think maybe you could pay out of the death penalty. You didn't actually kill anyone on purpose. So you would think maybe you could pay out of the death penalty because since the opposite. Because the killer, you're not chayim misa, you're only going to galus. So maybe money could pay your way out of galus. Money can't pay your way out of a death penalty, but maybe you could pay out of galus. That's why we need both psukim. So far we have basically four psukim teaching me the same thing. And the Gemara continues with a fifth pasuk. We're about 20 lines down. The first word line is Sricha. And the pasuk says, and the land will not be an atonement for the blood asher sheivech ba, that was spilled in it. Kim bedam sheivchai, rather your blood should be spilled. Meaning the punishment is the death penalty. Lama li, why do we need this pasuk? We need it for the following brayso. What happens in the case of Egla Rufa when you find someone is dead and you have to decapitate the head of the animal of the calf? So what happened if you decapitate the calf and then you find the Reitzach, you find the murderer? How do you know? How do you know he's not Potter? You would think the whole din of Egla Rufa is when you're not sure who killed this person, you decapitate that of the calf, and that's the kapara. So maybe you think if you did that action and then you find the murderer, maybe the murderer gets off scot-free. He does not. The land will not have a cold kapara for the blood that is spilled with it unless you kill the murderer. So once you find the murderer, he has to be killed. And now we continue. The pasuk says, but Tamar says, I don't get it. Then why do we need the pasuk that says that this is the way to get the kapara for the innocent blood that was spilled? Lamali, why do I need that pasuk? Basically, that's the pasuk of Egla Arufa. That's the pasuk teaching me that Egla Arufa is a way to get kapara. But if you're telling me there's no for real kapara until you kill the Reiseach, what do we need that pasuk for? Explains the Gemara, we need it for the following price. How do we know in general that the way that Bezdin kills his Besayif is with a sword, that one of the 4 death penalties is Shumin Etzavar? How do you know it's from the neck? Make your becha, that you should purge the blood from your mix. So where do we learn this from? We equate all the death penalties, all the spills of blood, to Egla Arufa. The Egla Arufa is you decapitate, you crack his neck. So too, when the death penalty, Sayif is effected from the neck. But says the Gemara, 1 second. If you're telling me that we're equating the way to kill a murderer to the way of Egla Arufa, decapitating the calf, so therefore the same way we take off the calf's head with an axe and from the back of the head, are you going to tell me that we also should use an axe and do it by the back of the head, which we know is not true? We know, number 1, we use the sayif, a sword, and number 2, we do it in the front of the neck. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ravu, Amar Krav, what an incredible yesod. Love your friend. Even when someone is chayav the death penalty, you still want to find it the most favorable way, and that's why it's with the sword in the front of the neck, the least painful way of killing the person. And now we go back, another 6th pasuk called Chayrim Esher Yechram Min Adam Lo Yipadeh. The pasuk says, and anyone who's condemned to be killed, he should not be redeemed, meaning you can't pay your way out. Lambali, why do you need that pasuk again, teaching me the same yesod that you don't get payment in a case where there is a chiyuv misa? You need it for the following brayso. How do you know if you're on the way to kill someone who is chiyuv misa? And someone said, I take upon myself his value, the value of that guy that's about to be killed. How do you know? He said nothing. That guy has no value. He's chiyuv misa. It teaches me that you cannot be redeemed. So maybe this is even before the end of the court case. Not all men, only after he's convicted and chayiv misa, now he has no value. So if someone else pledges his value, he pledged nothing because that guy has no value because he's on the way to be executed. But I asked the Gemara, 5 lines from the white lines, Rav Chanani ben Akavya, Damar Nerech Manei Shadam of Kesubim. Rav Chanani ben Akavya says that no, when you accept upon yourself the value even of someone on the way to be executed, it is a good acceptance. Why? Because it's a fixed value. Hi, Kol Cheirem Avilei. What does he do with the pasuk of Kol Cheirem? Because Rav Chanani ben Akavya argues, and he says Eirech is a set value, and it doesn't go in the actual market that this guy has no market value because he's about to be killed. Rather, it goes by age and gender. So you did accept upon yourself something. So what does he do with the pasuk that says Kol Cheirem? Explains the Gemara. He needs it for the following brayso. Rabbi Shmuel ben Aisha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, Aimer, 2 lines to the white lines. Lefisha Masinu Lemumsin Bidei Shamayim. That we find one who is chayim misa b'dei shamayim shenoisten mamayin u'mischaber b'hem, that they can pay and they can receive atonement. Shenemar, that's what he uses his pasuk for him. Kover yishalav yochalaf b'dei adam kain tamalem ercheirem min adam lo yipadeh. That when it comes to the death penalty of man, that's when lo yipadeh. Ve'inli elamisis chamura shlenita shegazan lekaparos misais kalo shenimna shegazan lekaparos minayin tamalem ercheirem. Therefore, the pasuk says, Cherem veloy mimila molei veloy tamuloymar kol cherem. Period. Excuse me. Tamuloymar kol cherem. Therefore, it says kol cherem. Okay, this last Josh, we're gonna have to speak it again tomorrow. But we're learning a big aside that says the Gemara of Yochanan ben Broika argues, and he's gonna tell me that you could redeem yourself, not if you're chayim misa b'dei adam, but if one is chayim misa b'dei shamayim, then he could redeem himself. The only kol cherem is by misa b'dei adam. We'll pick it up from here in the next year. Amir Tzashem.